Oh, time for another Man in Gray book review. Today's book is The Search Warrant by Patrick Modiano, translated from French by Joanna Kilmartin and published in 2000 by Random House. It's 138 pages. Patrick Modiano is a French writer who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2014. Most of his books are examples of what's known as autofiction, a combination of autobiography and fiction, not using novelistic techniques to tell the story of your life. And in this case, he combines that with a historical biography as well. One day, while thumbing through a copy of a 1941 Paris newspaper, on the third page of the newspaper, he found a small two-paragraph story about a girl, a 15-year-old girl named Dora Bruder, who was missing, and gave a description of her, and the clothing she was wearing was the clothing that you would see in a school uniform. So intrigued, Modiano tried to find out who this girl was and why she disappeared in the middle of winter during the Nazi occupation of Germany. This is one of the themes that you see in a lot of Modiano's books, is looking back during that period that most French people don't like to remember or think about, the period in the the early to mid-1940s, when France was occupied by Germany, and there was a puppet German government, the Vichy government, in charge. It was a French government, but they were puppets of the German regime. And so as he began to dig up the story of Dora Bruder, he found that she was a 15-year-old Jewish girl. Her father had been from Austria and had joined the French Foreign Legion during World War I and eventually settled in Paris. He worked in a factory until he got injured and then was kind of put out on a pension and retired. And he and his wife and Dora all lived in a small hotel room in kind of a rundown neighborhood in Paris. And when the Nazis came in and took over, they required all Jews to register as Jews. So the father and mother did, but they didn't register their daughter as Jewish. She remained unregistered, which was a crime under the law at the time. And so the question is, why did this Jewish girl wind up in a Catholic boarding school? They sent her to a Catholic boarding school. And he never really comes to a clear conclusion as to why. It may be that she was being difficult. He talks to one of the few people who knew her, who's still alive, as a teenager, and this person said that Dora was very rebellious and headstrong, so they may have sent her there to get her away from the family, or they may have sent her there to protect her from being deported by the Germans since she wasn't registered as a Jew. So she goes to this boarding school, and she's there for a while, and then she runs away. That's why the article was put in the newspaper. When she didn't come home, and they reported her missing, then the father went to a newspaper and reported. Well, he went to the police, and they went to a newspaper to report her missing, even though he knew that would draw attention to her. And she remained at large for about 4 months in the middle of the winter, and Modiano never figures out exactly what she was doing during this time period. There was a curfew on during this time, too. So it was very dangerous for her to be out on the streets, and not only in the cold winter, but during a period of curfew where if she'd been picked up, she would have been arrested. Eventually, she shows up back at home in the hotel room, but then she runs away again a few weeks later, and it's the second time that she runs away that she's arrested, and then eventually turned over to the Germans, who deport her to Auschwitz, where she's killed shortly afterwards. And then the same thing happens to both her parents. They're both eventually deported to Auschwitz and both killed. So the whole family is wiped out. So Modiano, in digging through this story, becomes more and more obsessed with what's going on, because he starts seeing parallels between Dora's life and his own. Modiano was born just a few months after the end of the war in 1945. And like Dora, he lived in kind of a rundown neighborhood in Paris. And like Dora, he was a headstrong kid who did not get along well with his father. Modiano's father eventually abandoned the family. And when he goes to try to get child care payments from him, the father turns him into the police. And he's dragged off to the police station and the court, and the judge threatens to throw him in jail if he causes any more trouble. So he sees parallels between those. And he also runs away from home. Modiano decided to leave home when he was about the same age as Dora. But this was in, I think, 1960 or so. And so he did not get arrested or anything. He decides to come back after a few days. But he sees parallels between his own life and that of Dora, and, thinks about what his life would have been like if had he been born a mere 10, 15 years earlier. Also, as he tries to trace the whereabouts of Dora, he goes back to these neighborhoods and tries to find out where she was going and all this. And he discovers that a lot of the places that Dora was a part of her life were gone. During the 60s and 70s, the French government began an urban renewal project in certain neighborhoods in Paris where they demolished all the buildings and rebuilt newer buildings. So the hotel where they lived is gone, and the Catholic boarding school and the church there that was all part of that, that's all been wiped out. Many of the cafes that she may have stayed or eaten at were gone as well. And so part of the theme here is the idea of loss, the destruction of this innocent kid by the Nazis, and also the destruction of the past, the memories of what happened, because the French government is kind of actively trying to erase the past because it was so unpleasant for the French people to remember. So it's not a cheerful book. It's rather grim, but it's beautifully written and very thoughtful. And if you've read other Modiano books, I think you'll really enjoy this one as well. The book is The Search Warrant. The author is Patrick Modiano. This has been another Man and Great Book Review. Thanks for watching.